Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Lunacy of Middle Age with your friends Pete
and Alex,
the podcast where we discuss the absurdity of life past 40. Nothing will be off limits, so buckle up and get ready to laugh with
and at us
as we talk about life in a raw and unfiltered way. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Lunacy of Middle Age. I'm Pete.
Hey, I'm Alex.
So last week we talked about resolutions.
And this week I didn't tell Pete what we're going to be talking about because I want to get his ideas on what he thinks it means to be middle-aged. So since this is the lunacy of middle age, what is middle-aged? And I know this is a topic that you feel sensitive about right now.
What does that mean?
Well, I think part of being middle-aged is that you're more aware of the fact that life is fleeting. It's a little depressing to say, but it's the truth.
Oh, so this is going to be an uplifting episode?
Not as much.
No.
Okay, so I want you to tell me, I looked up some things. I want you to tell me what you think middle-aged means and or what you think a middle-aged age range is. What ages constitute middle age?
I think that's dependent on the individual that's asking that question. Because I think if you asked one of our kids right now what middle age was, they would say it's 30.
Well, are they wrong?
I think so. Because, I mean, the way I look at middle age is the midpoint of your life. So if life expectancy is 82, then to me, middle age is 41.
Is the life expectancy 82?
I don't know.
I was going to ask you.
I think it's lower. I think it's lower.
I know what it is. So what is it? Take a
well,
realistic guess.
Are you going to ask me, is it for male or female? Because I know that it's different. So I'll say for males, it's 73, and for females, it's 76.
I mean, you're in the right range, but you're not right on either. And it does change from year to year.
Well, I know it's like in the 70s, though, for both.
Well, it's not. In 2020...
Oh, maybe it's 81.
The life expectancy for a male was 75, and the life expectancy for a female was 80.
Oh, maybe it's not wrong then. So that means that middle age technically would be around the 37 mark.
Or 40 if you're a woman.
Right. But that's not what I always figure that middle age is, I guess, because maybe it's more of a frame of mind than it is an actual number. But,
because you're old?
Right. But now that I'm old, but I mean, I'm almost 50. I'm pushing 50 this year.
Right. Are you going to live to be 100?
No.
You could.
I don't think I can.
All right. So
I don't have the genetics even.
So technically speaking, you're probably past technical middle age. You're definitely past age 37 if that would be considered the
But I wouldn't ever even put 37 at middle age, I don't think. Maybe it's because you don't really want to think about it. You don't want to think about your life being halfway over at 37. Oh my God.
I know. Well, throughout history, the life expectancy was certainly a lot lower than
middle
it is
age
now. So 37 would have been old.
Middle age in the middle age time would have been 17.
Yeah, right.
Or 12.
I mean, we're living in a time where people live longer than they ever have before. So that's great, I think. Especially because if you can live longer and feel good, feel healthy while you're doing it, that's wonderful.
So I think back to your original question, I would probably say that middle age is 45 to 50. But I know that you don't live to be 100. But I guess the reason why I would say that that's middle age is because that's where I would say you start to feel older. You start to feel like you're on the decline.
Well, you could say it that way, but you could also say it's when you've reached like the midpoint of what you expect to experience in your life. Like you've accomplished a lot by the time you get to sometime in your 40s, according to what you're saying would be considered middle age. Did you say 45 to 50?
Yeah, probably.
I mean, at that point in your life, lots of people would have already had their kids if that's what they want to do. A lot of people would be potentially pretty well established in their careers. You might have gotten to a point where you could, by the type of living situation that you want, like if it's a house or if it's a condo, depending on where you live in the world, or, you know, not in the world necessarily, but what type of living situation you want to have. You hopefully at that time of your life could have afforded not your dream home, but, you know, something that you feel stable and secure in.
I don't know. What do you think middle age is?
Well, it's hard for me to say because I already looked up some information on it.
Yeah,
But I agree with you. I don't think middle age is the technical middle age of probably before 30, knowing how long humans are typically able to live. I mean, most people do not live to 100. Most people live to be in their 70s, according to these statistics that we found. But I think I agree with what you're saying. Like, middle age is sort of a frame of mind. Like, you reach this point in your life where you've accomplished a certain amount of things, and that sort of feels like middle age.
Do you think most people that get to let's just stick with it, middle age is, let's say 48, just to pick a number.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that individuals that hit 48 start to think about mortality more?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's part of what's rolled into this whole concept of middle age and the concept of a midlife crisis. You know, you get to a certain age, whatever it is, probably not the same for everybody, but maybe around mid to late 40s, like you're saying. And you start to become much more aware, almost hyper aware of the fact that, you know, life doesn't last forever.
Do you think that swings the other way after you get to a certain age? Like, do you then start to just accept it and not think about it as much?
So you're saying after you reach a certain point in your life, you kind of just accept the fact that life on Earth will eventually come to an end. I don't know that it's necessarily something that you accept, but maybe you come to terms with it in a way that's... You have to come to terms with it in some way. I mean, you can't wake up every morning and think to yourself, oh my gosh, I'm going to die someday. I mean, obviously that's the case. It is sad to think about, but I don't know. I've always taken the perspective that you should try to enjoy every day as much as you can. Focusing on something like when it's going to end, to me, seems so like it's like a waste. It's a waste of the life that we're lucky to have, you know?
So do you think that, because I think in discussions that we've had before, you said it might be dependent on what your thoughts or beliefs are too, of whether you do it. So do you think that individuals that have a religious background or a devout religious belief, that they don't contemplate death as much as maybe individuals that don't have such a devout?
Well, I absolutely think that one's personal religious beliefs play a really important role in how you would react to the thought of, just the realization that someday life on Earth will end. I do. I think that makes it easier for people to come to terms with the reality of dying. So it does play a role in it for sure. But I mean, the reality is, no matter what, someday all of our lives on Earth, the way that we currently know it, is going to come to an end. That's just how it goes. So no matter what your religious beliefs or how you feel, how you come to terms with it, that's the reality.
But I don't like that.
I don't like it either. But in going back to your original question, think about our parents. I mean, my mother has already passed away, but my dad and both of your parents are in their 70s. Your parents are in their late 70s. My dad's more so in his early 70s. But I think both sets of parents, for them, it's a reality. But do you
think they think about it?
I think they do think about it.
So it's weird for me because I'm 49, and it seems like this last 3 months, I bet I've almost thought about it daily.
Really? And in your previous years up till age 49, you don't think you thought about it as frequently?
Mm-mm.
So it's kind of like you've reached a point where you switched over for whatever reason. For you, 49 was kind of like a tipping point for you.
But that's why I'm hoping that you would have told me that, oh yeah, I think that people stop thinking about it once you sit a...
Well, I don't know. I can't speak for other people. I just think I would always be aware of it. I try not to focus on it. And quite honestly, if I do focus on it, it makes me nervous.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
And I mean, with my mom having already passed away, that kind of like has shifted things to the forefront of my mind, maybe a little sooner than I would have for you, because your parents are both still alive. Having my mom die in her late 60s, it was kind of it's not like a wake up call. Like, obviously, I already knew that, life doesn't last forever, but it brings it to the forefront of your mind, and that's tough. It's really tough.
So what do we do about it? How do I stop thinking about it? You know what some of it is, I think, honestly, is that I don't know. I think you have to be almost busy doing something all the time to not think about it. And I think that's what your life is. I think your life is a continual process of doing things and experiencing things so that your mind doesn't think about the inevitable.
Well, to a degree, but then doesn't it seem counterintuitive that people look forward to retirement when they can lay back and relax? Having more free time seems to me that your mind would wander off to things that might be depressing more often, maybe.
Maybe. I don't know. I look at it the other way too and say, I can't wait to retire because I guess I'm not one of those lucky people that have found a career that satisfies me. Like, I don't wake up in the morning and say, man, I love going to work. I love what I do.
No.
And I think that's, to me, the driver of why I want to get out of the workplace. But the problem is when you hit middle age, I think that some more of your fears come into play too, because you understand that you are on the downward slope. And so the risk taking that you have decreases because we have a comfortable life. We have a nice house. We have the luxuries of things which I know many people probably don't have. But so I don't want to give that up. I don't want to quit my job and then not have something that's going to be able to sustain the same life. Whereas if I was in my 20s and I had this thought process, I might have been more adventurous in what I did, because it's easier to be comfortable making the salary that you make, doing something you love, and getting by than it is to make the change now.
Yeah, that's obviously true. I don't know. I mean, I guess what I would say is, of course, you don't take as many risks. And you were talking about taking risks in regard to like a professional career path or something like that. Well, it's tricky. You're right. Like, you become accustomed to a lifestyle and a way of living where, you don't want to necessarily make a drastic change at a certain age in your life. You kind of like run out of time to be able to have that flexibility. And it's not just us. Like, you and I could be flexible about where we live and in like what type of living situation we have. And we're very blessed. There's no doubt about that. But we have kids. I mean, we have a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old still in the house, 2 older kids that have already left and are independent. But having kids at home kind of limits what your options are. We can't just, pick up and move to a cheaper location or move into a house that's, I mean, I suppose we could live in a smaller house where each of the kids, where the kids kind of had to share bedrooms and stuff like that. But it would be a challenge. So we don't really have a lot of flexibility, I guess, at this point. In careers, if that's what you're saying is kind of like, I mean, I wanted to mention something to you though. What you're saying is you look forward to retirement because you're not, you don't wake up ready with excitement to go to your job. But there are a lot of compelling, there's a lot of compelling information out there that states if you work longer, you live longer. But if you're not enjoying what you're doing, is it worth it? I don't know.
But I think that's the key. Mm-hmm. Is that study done on people that enjoyed their job, so it gave them. And I'm not saying that I think I would retire and not do anything. I would retire and do something, but it would be something I would enjoy. And whether that's, trainings or public speaking or whatever that is, that's the stuff that I enjoy, then that's what I would do. But you have to get to that comfortability level to be able to jump off of that. And having kids that are 15 and 12 kind of dampens that.
It does.
And I would have been scot-free, by the way, because getting remarried to you and then having these two smaller kids, my older kids are already gone, so I would be able to have some flexibility.
Well,
so maybe it's that I harbor some resentment towards you.
Oh my word. These are the choices you've made. That's mean.
No, I'm sorry.
And it makes it seem like we're not happy in our life, and I think we are, aren't we?
Sure.
That's ridiculous. All right. I want to give you some information here. So I looked up some information about what middle age is.
Mm-hmm.
This is funny. I think this is funny. When I was doing this research, I was like, well, I want to find a source that's pretty valid. So I found Britannica. Remember when we were kids, we used to have to do reports. We always had to go to the Encyclopedia Britannica collection, like 50 books, all beautifully bound and everything.
Right. Some of your friends had them at their house, so you thought that they were rich because they had all those.
The real encyclopedia set at their house. I know. I had to go to the library. Well, this was the online version, but I still feel like they have like all those years behind them to make this a resource that's valid, right? You're old, by the way. You had to go to your friend's house to do your book reports using their Encyclopedia Britannica.
No, I didn't do book reports.
Oh, I had to do that. Okay, so
I had to do it too. I just didn't do it.
According to Britannica, they say middle age is defined as the period of human adulthood that immediately precedes the onset of old age. I was like, really? That's your definition, Britannica?
What's the definition of old age?
I didn't look it up. Wait, there's more. So it says it's generally defined as being between the ages of 40 and 60, which I thought was a little surprising, and it's right in line with what you sort of defined as your idea of middle age.
I think 60's pushing it, but
it is.
I think anything over 50 is pushing it.
Well, maybe. I think it depends on your mindset. Like if at age 60 you feel spry and pretty healthy and fit, maybe you're still in that kind of like window of age where you would consider it middle age. I mean, no one's going to live to be 120. Maybe. I don't think that's the point. It's like a mindset thing.
But at 49, I'm fat and broken down and not spry.
Oh, well, speaking of that, here are the characteristics that they use to describe middle age. It is marked by a decline of physical abilities.
All right, check.
Check. Awareness of mortality.
Oh, shit, check.
Reminiscing about the past rather than anticipation of the future.
That's the triple check mark.
Really? You don't anticipate the future? I do.
I spend more time dwelling in the past.
I know, but you've always been that way. You look back at the good old days, like your glory days, I guess. Why do you think the past was better than what's happening now or what's to come?
I don't, because I shouldn't say that. Because probably 10 years from now, I'll look back on this and reminisce about how
But why do you always do
interesting.
that?
I don't know. I always have. I always have.
Well,
especially because, I think I've always been, even though I don't have a musical bone in my body and I can't sing or I can't play an instrument, no matter how much I try, it's really songs. But I feel like I have a close connection to music. So every time I hear a song, I can vividly remember what I was doing. Maybe not the first time I heard the song, but it was popular at the time, which then takes me back. It's almost like a musical connection more than it is a connection to the things I was doing at the time. I don't know if that makes sense.
But in general, you're just saying if you hear a song that was played in the 80s or the 90s, you think back to that time period and you feel,
nostalgic.
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody does that.
Well, and I will say too, and I know that you don't want to go down any type of this rabbit hole or anything, but for some reason to me it always seemed like the 80s didn't have as much conflict and strife, and it wasn't as complicated. But that could be because I was a kid. It might have absolutely nothing to do with
the political climate at the time.
Or not just political, but I mean anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean,
because for now, I bet you our kids don't really think much about it either.
Well, unfortunately, I think some things that might be considered stressful to us are more in our children's heads than they were when we were kids. I mean, I'm sure there were some kids in the 80s who were aware of stuff that was going on, but I kind of wasn't. I don't know, I played outside with my friends and That's
because we weren't inundated with everything. We didn't have people that were in a small little office doing podcasts and trying to
Well, it's not that. It's just, you're right. Like, they're exposed to literally everything because they have phones in their hands and they can see the internet, which is...
So anyway, we kind of got off topic there. You were talking about the Encyclopedia Britannica. And it's saying it's anywhere between 40 and 60.
Yeah. So then I looked at
and that was the definition was...
the period that comes before old age. And I was like,
Right.
okay.
I don't know what old age is.
That was a disappointing
That's a cop-out.
definition, I thought. But then I looked at Merriam-Webster, another combo that you might be familiar with from our famous dictionaries as we were children. All this is obviously online now.
Was that a... Like, did they marry each other? Because wasn't it just Webster's dictionary when we were growing up?
I don't think that Merriam and Webster got married.
Not
but I think
like
they
that.
like
I mean,
combined,
a marriage of a company. I didn't think that there were like individuals that tied the knot. I was saying two companies that...
I assume. I don't know.
All right, good.
Well, anyway, they define middle age.
And I wonder why Merriam got top billing on that instead of Webster Merriam.
Merriam bought out Webster.
Is that what it was?
No, I don't know.
I got.
Well, anyway, they define middle age a little differently, between 45 and 64 as opposed to 40 and 60. So they stretch it. I mean, they start their definition of middle age is a little later and they stretch it even further. 64 seems, I don't know why the difference between 60 and 64 stands out to me.
Because I think they're putting that top line up there is because that's when people retire.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, maybe. Makes sense.
Especially now at 64. Because I think my retirement age is supposed to be 72. Which is ridiculous.
Are you saying to...
I'm saying, I guess, based on Social Security benefits.
If you want to get full benefits, it starts at age 72?
Full benefit. Oh, I don't even know if it's considered full benefits. I think that's where I would max out at as far as the money's concerned. I can take early withdrawal, which wouldn't get me anything, and then I can do it at 64, which would get me half of what it would do at 72 or something like that. I don't remember.
Yeah, it's pretty substantial. That's probably why. Like, I guess they're saying, like, middle age is this period of time where the end of middle age happens when you kind of shift over to being retired.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of a standard retirement age is the middle 60s.
I get you. But I still don't know. Is there something wrong with me where I think about mortality and being middle age more than...
No.
Or does everybody think about it? It's just that we don't talk about it.
No, I mean, that's part of what that's rolled into this concept of middle age. You do become more aware of your mortality and you do think about it more.
Well, what were we doing? We were doing check marks there.
Those were the things.
Those three
they
things?
had like 3 points that
So all
Britannica
those three
was
things.
saying. These are the these are
So
the
if
markers.
I checked off on all those three things, then I'm middle age.
Yeah, I thought you were anyway. Was there a question?
No. I am by age, but I'm definitely by mindset.
I think it's more of a mindset than anything anyway, but yes, you seem to be...
What were the three things again?
Decline of physical abilities.
Yeah.
Awareness of mortality.
Yeah.
Reminiscing about the past.
Well, it's kind of interesting, though, because I would say that those three things... I really only probably been able to check off the box of those three things in the past year.
Really?
Especially with the decline of physical abilities.
So you felt all throughout year 48 you were totally like at the top of your game?
I wouldn't say I felt like I was at the top of the game, but it didn't seem like I needed to make groans and grunts when I stood up just from a seated position.
It seems to me, and this is just something I've noticed, that when you do stand up from a seated position, you're hunched over for a little bit there.
Because my back hurts. But that's what I'm saying. I didn't feel that. Or even to the point like when I was... Like when I built a deck last year, like I noticed that I definitely felt sore after building that deck, more so than I did 5 years ago when I built the deck at the other house. Like I could build it and I don't know. So maybe that's the reason why. It's interesting that those are the three things. And if I reflect back on it, then those are probably the three things that I've most noticed about myself. So...
Yeah.
But the one I don't care about the physical, well, it's not that I don't care about it. The one I hate is I hate constantly thinking about
mortality.
And I don't know how to stop myself from thinking about it.
Well, I always feel like you can change your mindset, but you never really feel like you can.
Well, this is what I was thinking about the possibility of, because again, one of the episodes that we talked about resolutions, which we've been doing good so far in the first little bit of time. We've been eating healthy. We've switched to a vegetarian diet every other day. I'm not giving up the meat, so there's no way I'm doing that entirely.
Fine. That's
but
fine.
I'm saying we've been doing better. And I've been exercising more. So I was hoping that maybe if I can uncheck that first box of the physical, what was it?
Decline of physical abilities.
The decline of physical abilities. If I can take that check mark away, then maybe the other two, I won't think about the other two as much.
Yeah, maybe. I think you're right.
Especially because I look at some people, like it's funny to me when you go back, and I'm sure everybody's seen this before, when you go back and it's like the age of Wilford Brimley when he was in Cocoon versus this Tom Cruise being the same age when he was doing like Mission Impossible 3. Like I got to imagine that Wilford Brimley felt a lot more middle-aged at that year than Tom Hanks did at that same age.
Tom Cruise
did. But that's what I'm saying. You look at those people, so you know it's, and I know genetics come into play and all that other kind of stuff too, but I also think that individuals at middle age start to hit a wall where they just they just kind of give up.
Wow.
Whereas if you don't give up, then it kind of pushes that mindset of middle age out farther.
Yeah, I think you're right, for sure. I mean,
But that has to do with that first check mark.
It does. If you make a concerted effort to try to stay fit and eat healthy so that your body is kind of, it's staying strong for you, I think that you certainly could feel less middle-aged, so to speak. And I mean, that is funny. Like Wilford Brimley and Tom Cruise, holy cow, at the same age, like,
I think Wilford Brimley, and we should look that up, but I think when he did Cocoon, for some reason I want to say he was only like in his 40s, like late 40s. Like he might have been my age.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think we did look it up before.
Do I look like Wilford Brimley in Cocoon?
You look somewhere between Tom Cruise and Wilford Brimley.
That still hurts.
Tom Cruise probably has a personal trainer and he works out all the time and eats a healthy diet every single day of his life. I mean, that's his
plus
job.
He's like 4'2" and I'm 6'2", so
he's not 4'2".
He's close.
He's like 5'7". But anyway, that's not the point. The point is he makes an effort because it's part of his job to look a certain way to stay fit. And I think he probably does feel healthier, younger, more spry than some people.
I know. And that could go down a whole huge rabbit hole too, because I think that people that stay in shape longer have a higher confidence level in themselves and their abilities and everything else than people that just kind of start to give up.
They do. I'm not, but I think
because I always feel more self-confident, but when I'm in shape.
I agree. But you said people hit a wall in that they give up. I thought you were going to say something else. Like from a human longevity point of view, our bodies start to our body chemistry changes as we get older. That's why you start to get wrinkles. That's why your metabolism slows down and you might put on weight in a way that you might not have when you were younger. I mean, those are things that you can't control, although eating a healthy diet supposedly can maybe slow down that type of thing from happening to your body, but it is what it is. Like, you get old, stuff starts to wear out, you lose muscle mass, your metabolism slows, you lose collagen in your skin, starts to look droopy. All those things happen naturally. I mean, that's what the aging process is. So like the shell around you starts to sag. But you can work out and try to keep everything, keep your muscle tone intact and everything so that you feel more fit, look more fit, maybe have more confidence. I don't know. Well, speaking of this, there's another thing I wanted to mention to you. There's an article in Psychology Today about sort of like midlife crises and how people sometimes go through that. And by the way, a midlife crisis, they say usually could occur. It doesn't happen for everybody, of course, but if it's going to occur, it happens sometime after the 30s. Meaning like you could have a midlife crisis as early as 41, yeah. I just thought that was a little interesting. Like,
but what is a
anytime
midlife
after
crisis?
The 30s.
Like, isn't that... Because really what I think midlife crisis ends up coming to be is just that's where you become more aware of your mortality. So that's why people say, people think of midlife crisis as being somebody that goes out and buys a Corvette and, tries to change their lifestyle and try to look younger or live younger. But in reality, people that are younger can't afford Corvettes or the stuff that people hit their midlife. What I think it more means is when you hit that midlife crisis, you realize, holy cow, I only have a certain number of years left. Why am I bothering saving all my money when I'm never going to be able to enjoy it? Instead, I'm just going to piss it all away now and try to enjoy my life when I can.
Yeah, maybe.
But then I think that switches on shortly thereafter, and they say, oh man, I just spent all my money and now.
Well, this article I was going to mention to you said life satisfaction may decrease in midlife, but it may also rise again in the senior years. So I think you're right. Going back to what we discussed at the beginning of this podcast, I think you said, like, do people ever reach a point where they kind of come to terms with the fact that we are mortal, we're mortal beings? And I think maybe I don't know if it was a statistic or just something that they noticed in their research for this article, but they said life satisfaction may rise again in senior years. Maybe people come around to the conclusion that they're like, you know what? I'm still here and I'm alive. I'm doing this thing. Like, I'm going to have a good attitude and I'm going to enjoy every moment that I have here. And I like that.
That's good. So you're giving me the positive news that, because I think about my mortality every day and have for the past several months, that there's going to come a time where it's going to switch the opposite direction and I'm not going to think about it and I'm going to be enjoying it more so. But you know what the problem with that is? Because you're 6 or 7 years younger than me, that means from 6 years from now, when I'm out of the funk, you're going to be getting in the funk.
Well, I mean, I told you, having my mom pass away at what I consider to be a younger age, I think sort of like shifted my thought process up a little bit. So maybe we're at the same point.
Could be. Well,
but I think that's a positive way to end today. Your life satisfaction will probably rise again in your senior years. But it is a mindset thing. Like, if you want to sit around and be mopey in your old age, you can do it. Sit underneath a rain cloud if you want.
I'm not going to. I'm going to sit underneath that rainbow.
I hope you do. I want to. This is our life. Let's make the best of it every day.
Okay. All right. Well, it was good to do this podcast. I'm glad that we kind of discussed the topic, since it is the title of our podcast. It'd be interesting to know if anybody else has the same thoughts, or even if they can give me some therapeutic, whatever you want to call it, exercises to be able to stop thinking about mortality as much. Our email address is lunacyofma@gmail.com. That's lunacy. I know, it's difficult. lunacyofma@gmail.com. So feel free to email us, and if you do, we'll discuss some of those other topics as we go along. But appreciate everybody and hope everybody's safe in these times. And we'll speak again soon. Hopefully have another podcast up by next week. So take care, everybody.